Good. Right. Remember to do that. Yes, Secretary's report. I'll kick off with that if that's all right. Ronnie said in a report, gained some new members this last week after putting a piece on Facebook. We have 562 members. Penny and Jenny have joined, so we have a further 5 more whose checks are in the post.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Something funny's happened here.
Something strange is going on.
Yeah. It says you are sharing your screen on mine, but...
Likewise, but I'm not.
That's what mine says.
Oh,
Right,
there we
let's
are.
get rid of it.
No, back to normal.
Yep. He reckons there's enough money in the pot to add another member to it onto the Blue Jeans account. That's adding more control to the monthly meetings. So,
Oh, it's gone again.
hello.
We've got an email now. It looks of it.
Oh.
Oh. No, we're not leaving the current meeting. Unless Ronnie is trying to get in. Oh. Oh, Janice has left the call. I wonder. Right. Agenda. Video meeting for research discussions, which we do anyway, I think, don't we? Or don't
Pretty
we?
much, yeah.
So it's trying to come back in again, I think. I know he proposed that we were going to perhaps do a video meeting with a school.
Yep.
Using Blue Jeans to the classroom. Blue Jeans have vetoed that, which is a shame. So what he's actually said in his report, my proposal using Blue Jeans to talk to the children in their classroom about the Far East in World War II seems to have been rejected. Although feedback from a local school, which I laid out the scheme, was very good. The scheme would have required an organiser who would give the scheme time to develop. Well, okay, that's fine. So I don't know if we can go much further on that one at the moment, although it seems to be a good idea to perhaps put the group into schools. Anybody got any ideas on that or any views on that?
Well, they have a set curriculum, and it's terribly difficult to insert anything into it. I think that's part of the problem. Unless it was done as an after hours or a weekend thing.
Does anybody know anyone who works in the education department anywhere? There's sometimes having someone who works for in the school system, I guess, can give a good lead on what you can and what you can't do, or what might be accepted.
I think, to be honest, Martin, Ronnie had somebody that was working in the school system.
Right.
I don't know whether it's a relative of his.
Yep.
Because I was pretty sure it's that school he approached. But it seems to be that Blue Jeans don't want their platform used in the schools.
Oh, I see. So that's
whether somebody could go to school and give a talk. Yes, that's anything is possible. I'm not putting anybody's name forward at the moment, but yeah, I've done it before. The Researching FEPOW History Group has done it a couple of times. I think the schools project that CoFEPOW had didn't take off, sadly, but there is something else going on for that, I believe.
Right.
I sent that info to my local school because a friend of mine's a governor there, and while they were interested, they said they hadn't got the time to fit it into the curriculum.
I think you're right, Penny. I think that's probably got to be the...
Yeah. So probably a one-off talk might just be easier to slot in somewhere.
Right. Yes, I've a feeling probably
integrated with Janice.
Hello, Janice. I think your mic's off.
She's gone again anyway.
We can see you, but we can't hear you.
I can't see her.
Well, I can.
Yeah,
I can see her, but I can't hear her. You need to unmute it.
You need to unmute your mic. Your microphone's
off. Is that better?
That's better.
No?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm on a mobile phone. I can't pick it up on my tab.
Right. Welcome to the meeting. How are you? All right?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm well, thanks. You?
Good. Yeah, very well. Just melting in this heat. But can't complain. I'm not going to complain about it because I remember the winter. And I think all those Brits that went to Spain and Portugal for the warmer weather are beginning to regret that now. There's about 44 out there, I think, which is quite
they regret the money they spent on it too.
Yeah, too right. So I think on the schools thing, I think you could be right, Penny, that it's going to be a case of having another go and perhaps giving a talk, see if we can slot in a talk.
I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing, but I'm not sure how you'd set about it or what approach you'd use, or whether even schools would be receptive.
Well, I seem to recall something from the FEPOW trustees meeting we had last week, and the only reason I mention it is because the schools project came up. I believe there is something going on with that, not in its original format. I know, so I'll get in touch with Chris and see what I can find out again. But I'm very, very sure that I know that came up.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. We're seeing Chris next week anyway, but I'll ask the question before then. Right. So we've got more work to do on that one. Right. Next one. Very interested to know from Ray on Thailand.
Yeah, well, I'm still here, speaking to you from Ubon Ratchathani in northeast Thailand, and I've had a very successful week with research the Japanese prisoner of war camp that was set up here in February 1945, and was a camp where 3,000 POWs were liberated in August 1945, and eventually they returned home to to the UK, to Australia and America, but most of the Dutch had to stay behind in Thailand because most of the Dutch POWs were from the Dutch East Indies, which was, after the war finished, there was under a civil war in that country. So they were retrained actually by the British Army and sent back to Dutch East Indies from about January 1946. That's by the by. Anyway, this week I've had a meeting with the governor of Ubon. My fixer, I shall refer to her as my fixer, Aura Thai, affectionately known as Auntie, but she's my fixer. She managed to get a meeting with the governor of Ubon, and in Thailand they have a sort of system of townships where the town has a mayor, each village has a leader, then each village in a township has a mayor, and overall the district, if you like, or what's called the Amper, is the governor. Very powerful chap. We managed to get 20 minutes of his time to talk about the research that's going on at Ubon camp and the airstrip. In addition, I had a meeting with the commander of the Thai army that's got quite a big garrison in Ubon, and he granted that, oddly enough, they own the airstrip, apparently. It's all very confusing to me because it was all spoken in Thai, and 99% of it went over my head. But apparently the army owned the airstrip, and we had to get permission from them to fly a drone, which we did. But then we had to get permission in writing. We got verbal permission at the meeting, but then we had to send a letter to them to get permission to take photographs. And then we had to send the same letter to the Air Force to get permission from them to take photographs from the drone. Why? I don't know. Nobody has been able to answer this question. You can go on Google Earth and look at the airstrip and the radio stations and all manner of things from Google Earth, just the same way that you can with a drone. But we went through this bureaucracy that lasted about 6 days of going back and forth to the air base and the army camp. But eventually we got there, and we arranged to meet the army at the airstrip Friday morning. There was 4 soldiers there. One was a sergeant that was leading the thing, and they were great. They really got into it, and gave us permission not only to fly the drone but to use the Meta. I'm very grateful to Martin for his exploits with the metal detector in camps, because it was quite a success. I come up with about 33 different items in about 3 hours of searching under very hot conditions. I'll show you them in a moment. Then in the afternoon, we met the drone man, who was officially recognised as being a drone pilot. You have to go through all sorts of registration now in Thailand. He's got all of that accreditation. And the Air Force turned up, 3 of them, including one, I don't know what rank he was, but he was quite a senior officer. And they came and they gave us permission, but we couldn't take photographs of the wireless station, which was at the end of the runway. So we've got limited drone footage, which I've not been able to view yet because I've not been able to download it. So I can't share any of that with you yet. But yeah, the Air Force were a bit offy, really. Didn't really like them, but the Army were great, and they want me to go back there to the camp next time I come to Thailand to give them a talk on the history of the airstrip. So meanwhile, that's the airstrip. At the camp, last Sunday we visited the area of the camp with the old guy who I met just over a year ago. His name is Tong Di. He's about 86 years old, and he was a young boy when the camp was established. And he used to play in and around the camp, especially after the liberation. The soldiers befriended a lot of the village people, and his memory is very good. And he took us to a place on the perimeter of the camp that we'd not been to before. And just by chance, all these things happen by chance, and it's amazing, really. We met the leader of the village, and her husband took us to his rice field. And on the edge of his rice field was where the kitchen was of the prisoner of war camp. And he excavated for us, just by digging a few inches into the ground, some bricks that he said were used as a stove. And I was, a little bit of memory jogged with me, because Charles Steele has written a book called The Burma Railway Man, edited by, what's his name now? Brian Best. And that book, I don't know if you've read it, but Charles Steele was a warrant officer in charge of the kitchen, and he wrote letters to his wife more or less every, I think about 3 a week over the 3.5 years. And whilst he was in Ubon, he mentioned this stove and said that one evening a Japanese guard came round and ordered him to move the stove, get out of the kitchen and relocate in another place, leaving all the equipment behind. And he was a bit annoyed about this, because he said what he really thought was that the Japanese were impressed by the handmade bricks that the prisoners had made to build this oven. And there were these bricks. So I'm now the proud owner of 18 of these bricks. Get a few more, I could probably make a stove myself out of them. So that was last Sunday. And then yesterday we revisited the camp at the same point and spoke to the same people. And I asked my wife, who can speak Thai and English, to ask them if there were any more bits of ephemera or materials or stuff that was in the village. And she came up with this, the leader said, yes, there's a lady just a few yards down the street, and she has a bomb casing. Would you like to see it? Oh, yes, please. And 5 minutes later, I bought it, and I'm now the proud owner of a Japanese bomb casing. which is a bit geekish, I know, but it's better than it's been lost, because Thai people
right.
have the historical value of these. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to just give you a little bit of a show of these items.
Yeah, go on, please do.
Just switch my camera around. So I'll start with those are half of the items. At the top, try to hold this with one hand. This thing here, I think that's a knife. It's got a serrated edge at the bottom.
All right.
And we think this is a bullet. And then the rest of the bits, this is some kind of a latch. Got a screw in it and bracket. And this is quite interesting because it's a piece of bamboo. And it's got a very fine wire coming out of one end of it. I don't know what it is, but it's certainly something. and the rest of the bits are bits of shrapnel, I think. I'm not sure what this is. I thought it was something off an epaulet at first, but looking at it a bit closer, I think it's a piece of wood, piece of twig. But that's various bits of shrapnel. And then on this side, there's a 20p piece there, just to give you an idea. This thing here is a handle, or half of a handle. We've got a few bent nails and other bits of shrapnel. But this is quite interesting, this piece here, because it's a shape. It's not like the other bits, which are jagged and torn and all sorts. So it looks like some kind of an implement of some sort. We'll never know. But I'd like to believe these are bits of shrapnel from the enforced dissolution of the Japanese armaments. And here's my bomb casing.
Wow.
Oh, that's nice.
So
it's not the usual holiday souvenir.
No, I think I might have a bit of trouble at customs getting this through.
I think you'll have a lot of trouble at customs.
Yes, you will. They don't like you taking. They don't like you taking stuff out of the country now.
No, they don't. Especially bomb casings. It's
Ray, can you bring that bullet back?
The bullet?
Sorry. Yes, you had a bullet in the first ones. Can you bring that back? Is that allowed?
Well, it feels like a piece of metal. But the army guys seem to agree that it was a very sort of decomposed bullet. It's certainly, it's got.
Can you bring that home through customs?
I'm willing to give it a try. Yeah.
You may well be turned down because the Thais are getting very touchy about people bringing stuff out of their country.
Yeah, they are actually. Yeah.
Which especially if you go along the Thai-Burma Railway and start picking up spikes and things like this, they get just a little bit upset, which is, I suppose, understandable. We get upset if somebody's tried walking off with bits and pieces they found over here, bits of Adrian's wall and things like that. So
Victoria Station could disappear.
In the end, I think I'm going to get some of that rust remover stroke primer and try and get a bit of colour back into it. So my wife has kind of agreed to keep it so far. She says, "You've really gone ting tong now." And then here's just a sample of the stones or the bricks for the stove. I unfortunately broke one when I was digging, but actually you can see inside the construction. I don't know how they made them. It must have had some kind of cement. It's a very soft stone, to be honest. So they probably just made it with.
Is there any clay locally? Clay soil locally?
Well, there's a lot of sand. It's a very sandy soil.
All right.
I don't know, but yeah, that's my collection. And having made contact with the governor, who I only expected about 10 minutes of his time, but we actually had a lot more than that, probably 20, 25 minutes. He was very interested in the project, and from the Thai point of view, what they're trying to do is express the Thai involvement with the prisoners of war and World War II, and just what effect it had on at Ubon. So my commitment to them is to write the story from an Ubon point of view, which I think will be kind of a bit different from what I'm trying to write up otherwise. So that was it.
Yeah, that's interesting because the way that you described the Thais looking at it, when I was in Singapore last year for the anniversary of the surrender, that is the way now the Singaporeans are looking at it. Okay, yeah, we know Brits were taken prisoner, the Australians were taken prisoner. Yes, we know about the railway. We know all about that. But what about what the Singaporeans went through? And they're now focusing more on that, the story from the Singaporeans' point of view. So, if the Thais are doing the same thing, it doesn't really. It's maybe a whole new way of thinking out there. It'd be interesting if it is.
Well, the main sort of thread through this is that the war memorial in the town of Ubon Ratchathani is it's not so much a war memorial as a present from the Dutch prisoners of war in thanks to who they call the Little Mother of Ubon. And I was beginning to wonder if this story was a myth, but I've actually had it verified from two different sources now, two quite reliable sources. And the Little Mother of Ubon was a lady and her daughter who had a fruit and veg stall at the market, and she used to leave a basket of fruit that was going to waste for the prisoners, and they took it, and eventually she started getting medicine for them and a few odd bits of clothing and stuff like that. So she did help them quite a lot. The thing was that the story is based down by the river, and the river is about 10 or 11 kilometres away from the camp and the airstrip. So I've been trying to think, well, hang on, how does this work? But we're very blessed that we've got a surviving POW in Gosport called Tom Brown. I don't know if any of you come across him, but I interviewed Tom at the beginning of June, sorry, and he was in a party based on the river, because at that time there was no bridge, and the railway station was on the opposite side of the river to the camp, and the camp was 10 or 11 kilometres further north. So his job was ferryman, and he had a truck, and once he got the truck loaded up, he used to drive it up to the camp, unload and go back, and that was his job. And he confirmed the Little Mother of Ubon as well. So I've had it from Tom, but I've also got a very detailed story from a Dutch prisoner called Henk Gideonson, where they go into a lot of detail about the Little Mother of Ubon monument and the party that they had for her before they left Ubon to go elsewhere. It was a big party, and they made a presentation of painting and other bits and pieces for her. But they also built this this monument as well. So that's where the story comes from. And I think what the Thai people are trying to do is to generate a bit of interest to say, well, yes, you know, we are good people, and this is what we did for the prisoners. And we, of course, we didn't like the Japanese, did we? But we liked the prisoners, and we wanted to do as much as we could. And the governor's got right behind this story. He's given us his full blessing. Whether there's any budget for it yet, we'll have to see.
Well, it'd be nice if there was, but
it'd be nice if there was.
Yeah. Oh, well
yeah.
done. That's brilliant.
So it's paying off really, because you know, my patience in going through all this rigmarole with the Army and the Air Force, it paid off, because I get access to all of this other stuff, and
makes it all the more rewarding now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can give something back to them, which is going to be useful for them, and that's great.
No,
Yeah,
well done,
so
you.
That's my story. I'm
Yeah.
coming back to the UK on Wednesday. I have no plans to come back in the immediate future, but I'd like to get one more trip in this year. But I've really got to find time to sit down and write these things up, because, you know, trying to write here in this heat, I can only manage it between sort of 8 and 10 in the morning, and then after that, it just sort of start to melt. So
well, we're melting here as well.
Yeah. No, I must admit, I can't take the heat outside. I mean, I've been to Thailand a couple of times and all the rest of it, but the heat here, I had to stay indoors. So I've been bashing the computer a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want to do when I get. Okay.
Yep. Went up to Kew yesterday, as I do, and still trying to look for bits and pieces. It's one of these things where you find something in a file and think, I must make a note of that, and you don't. So I'm frustratingly going through a load of old files now, looking for this one report. And it's a report that it's about POWs in Rangoon jail. And they just say that some of the diseases they suffered from didn't arrive by natural causes. The report
they were experimented on.
Yep.
That's so bad.
In actual fact, there's somebody that I met or contacted me last year, because his father's name is not on the wall at the Arboretum. And he's given me some details. And he found out a couple of bits and pieces. And he's right, his father's name is not on there. His father's name is not on the nominal roll of the men in Rangoon jail either. So I don't know whether there was a complete cell block that was kept out of the picture by the Japanese, because certainly his father was with the Chinook Brigade. That's where he was captured. So I'm doing some more digging on that. But also I'm going to go back to Kew now and try and find this file, which is a pain in the... So it's not as clever sometimes as you think you are. You know, you sort of, oh, well, yes, I'll make a note of that in a minute, and then you run out of time. And Marty's sort of sitting there grinning and thinking, yeah, that'll teach you, won't it?
No, I can understand exactly what you're saying. I've got so many bits and pieces that I read and think, yeah, I need to know that, or I need to make a note of that, and of course I don't.
Yeah.
Then I go back through tons and tons of files that I've got photographed and trying to find, you know, one sentence or one paragraph, and yeah, very frustrating.
Yes, doing the same job twice.
You know, how can we avoid doing this, and apart from making
go slower? I think in my case, stop trying to do so much in one day. Yeah. I need to go slower. Stop trying to do so much in one day.
Yeah, I tend to find I do quite a bit in the mornings before I go to work, and I rush through lots of things and then make a few notes, or I don't make notes, but I make mental notes, and of course the mental notes get lost, and then I'll go back and try and look for stuff and think, oh, where did I put that? Where did I put that?
Yeah.
I write things down on scraps of paper, but the trouble is I find a scrap of paper, then can't remember what it's about.
Yeah, well, I must admit, I keep a rather large notebook that I take with me to Kew all the time, and it's interesting in many respects because there is a project that I'm engaged with the charity, and it's checking out men's military history. And the only way you can do that, there's no questionnaire, oh, here we go, and you have to try and source it through other means, or as best as you can, or come up and say, can't find it. Sorry, not going to guess at it either, because we've had people doing that. But no, it's I'm just going through bits and pieces there and finding things that you didn't know, or you'll just come across a sheet of paper and just read stuff that's on it and think, well, never knew that. I think I've taken a couple of photos yesterday where I thought, oh, that's interesting. Click, and just go from there. But
have they got the photocopying machines working there properly?
They don't exist.
Well,
all the cameras, Penny, and all the photocopying machines have been removed. If you want to do anything there, at all, you can take a camera, or you can take your mobile phone, and that's it. They don't do it. And if you want, they will do printing for you.
Yeah.
At £1.30 a copy.
At a premium, yeah.
Goodness, I mean, last time I was there, they weren't working. Somebody came out and started kicking them.
Well,
Seriously?
No, they removed them all at the end of the year.
Really?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Trying to save money, and of course, then it's a case of redundancies. So their military specialist, because his deal was a good one, took redundancy. So it's the guys that have been there going to Cuba some time said, typical, they're getting rid of all the Indians and the chiefs are still where they are. So it's a bit frustrating, but it's working well. If you want to see a digitised document, you've got to present a very good reason for doing so.
I had to pay £3.50 to look at my great going back to 17 something father's will. £3.50 just to look at it. That was only last week. Yeah.
Oh, right. That's got to be in the family record centre, then, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was fiddling around looking for things, and it came up and at the up at Cube, but to have the digitised thing sent to me so I could print it out was £3.50.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it was only 2 pages long. Plus
it's on Facebook, Keith Bettany was saying, or said to me, or through a message to Ronnie, oh, does Keith go up to the IWM a lot? Could he have a look for some of my father's paintings? Because Dad gave a lot away to his mates.
Right.
And I thought, well, no, I don't, but I can do it and make a nice change. So went onto the IWM website. No, you can't come and look at paintings at the moment, sorry. And they've got nothing on from Des Bettany, none of his painting as far as I know. I've had a word with Meg Parks because she's got an in with the IWM. So I'm waiting to see what she could do for me. But I thought, if this is what they're doing with the paintings, what's the documents like?
Well, there is that. I mean, I find it quite frustrating because it took forever to get anything out of them.
Well, it would appear now.
I found myself ordering so many boxes of stuff to be ready when I arrived, and half of it was irrelevant because I couldn't find what I was looking for in the first place and didn't know where to start. Sound familiar?
Yes, very familiar.
I got it in the end, but
I find now that you have to give, if you want to go to the IWM and look at documents, you have to give at least 5 days' notice.
Right.
Because the documents are now being stored in a purpose-built document store at Duxford.
Really?
Now, that's the first I heard about it. When I saw a message on their site, and I thought, oh, right. I wonder if this is a sign of the times that they're going to start slowly moving stuff out of London. Maybe, I don't know. It'd be a shame if they do. So that's why you have to give 5 days' notice.
Right.
And I'm wondering whether pretty soon it'll be, well, no, if you want to view them, you've got to go to Duxford, which I don't mind because Go on, Martin.
I'm a little bit annoyed with them at the moment because last year I wanted to listen to the Philip Mininsky audio reels that they have, 6 reels, and so they're not online, and so I had to pay for them, and they charged me £10 per reel, so I bought all 6 of them. And I noticed online this week that they've actually put them online. So, yeah. So, thanks for taking my £60 from me.
They've now put those online because I don't know whether it was part of Meg Parks's project that she did with FEPOWs.
Right.
I don't think it was, but she found out that, and I think she interviewed 60 odd FEPOWs, that nothing was available.
Very few.
She gave them a little bit of a roasting about that. And, oh yes, we'll deal with it. We'll sort it. We'll get it on. So I'm beginning to wonder whether that may have been a result that they've put the lot on.
The James Bradley ones were already there. They've been there for quite some time. But I've noticed now that there's some that weren't there previously and now appearing.
No, it might be then that that's what's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
But they're quite happy to take your money from you, of course.
Oh, crumbs, yeah. I mean, I must admit, I've not been to the IWM since Rod Sutterby days. I'll be honest. So you're going back 6-7 years. I think the last time I was there, I was with Rob Beattie at the time. But now I would like to make the effort to go back up there again, but it's a case of going through stuff to see what I want to get hold of. I know what I want to get hold of. It's whether it's there.
Right.
So that's
Now, have you ever been to the King's College archive?
Nope.
Right.
Not yet.
Apparently, the Little Heart collection at the King's College, they've got quite a selection of Far East documents and files. I only became aware of this a few weeks ago myself. But I don't know what's involved in accessing what they've got, but I'm just actually looking for another one of those things. It's in my emails and I haven't saved it, so just trying to find what the catalogue was. 1 second.
Because I know there is a collection also at the University in Leeds, because we saw that in March.
Right.
That's quite an interesting one. I want to see if I get an in back into there.
Yeah, I know they've got. They had quite a few on Singapore, and they had a report by the first about the first Malay Command. Here we are. Jeez, I'm not organised here.
Join the club.
Yeah, I'll find it and I'll get back on that. Yeah.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, it's like, the Long March I'm still working on, and thank you for the lead for that. And there's other bits and pieces, and it's just trying to get around to it all.
Yes.
So I've got to make the time and put it down because as our new web manager Guy pointed out to me, he said, you're a mine of information, Keith. Put it down. Put it in writing, because
this is true.
When you depart this life, mate, it goes with you.
Yes,
right, there you go.
True.
It's right here in front of me. It was on my desktop. Right, here we go. Okay, so they have got various files. They got just trying to look at the ones that really stand out. What I might do is I might send you a copy of it, so you have a look through anyway. Yeah. But some of the ones that stood out for me was just trying to find it. Yeah, I'm not actually organised, so what I'll do is I'll send you a copy so you can have a browse, because there's so many of them.
but we got an invite.
Martin?
Sorry?
Where is that again? King's College, did you say?
King's College in London, yeah. The Little Heart collection, apparently, it's called. And that's an archive of.
To access.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult to get in. I think you've got to be, prove you're a researcher and all sorts of things. You can't just wander in.
Okay,
I may be wrong, but I seem to have heard of it before.
No, I would suspect you'll probably bang on to him, to be perfectly honest. Otherwise, everybody would be going there.
Yeah. No, I don't think you can wander in like the IWM or the National Archives.
But it may be possible that you can actually approach them to get digitised or copies of certain files. Certainly, they'll charge you, of course, but sometimes that's the only way that you can actually get stuff from some archives.
Well, we've got the charity received a letter after all this time from the National Army Museum. So we're arranging a visit there to see what they've got, which would be good.
Where's that?
National Army Museum is next to the Chelsea Hospital.
Oh, right.
Where the Chelsea pensioners are.
Yeah.
So that's so I'll let you know more about that when we're here. The other one I want to do is the British Library at St Pancras for the British Indian Army. So I've got to find somebody in there that can guide me, if you like, in the right direction. And if there are no records there on British Indian Army Far Eastern POWs, then I'm rather sunk, because I know the records in India have been destroyed.
Right.
So lots to do.
Well, it sounds as if you've got lots to do.
Yes, I have. I've got to. As you probably gathered, I'm not as organised as people probably think I am, and I've got to really apply myself to getting down and starting to do things now. The researching bit I enjoy. It's fun. You meet people, learn lots of different bits and pieces. But I've really got to start putting this stuff in writing. It's just going through proving somebody's military record yesterday, and I just thought, I'll just have a flick through the liberation questionnaires. And I came across one. I thought, okay. And what struck me was it very, very detailed, very well written, and it was an additional page, all in fountain pen. Turn over the other side, and this guy joined Air Force. He was on the railway, but he joined Air Force, and he starts naming the coolie camps where he was serving and who was there.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I thought, okay, right. So that's another one I can go back and revisit. But it is, you start looking through and you just find odd snippets of information.
Because that's interesting itself. Because based on sheer numbers alone of how many coolies were on the railway compared to Allied soldiers, there must have been far more coolie camps than there was Allied camps. Where are they all? They've got to be out there somewhere.
These two were at Kanchanaburi, because that's where there was a big coolie hospital as well. Found that out by default. I have got notes of others up in Burma. There was one at Niki or Naitai. So again, start listing them. That's what I've got to start doing, listing them. And said, you put it out there, this is what we found. Can anybody add to it? You just never know. You just don't know what's out there. But the fact this guy was with Air Force, I thought, well, that rang a bell, because I got contacted by a local paper. It's not my local paper, it's a Birmingham paper. This chap had appeared at a remembrance ceremony, and they asked, if we give you his name and number, could you let us know some history? And this guy was with Air Force. He was a medic with Air Force. And a very, very interesting, I gave chapter and verse. Not that they used it, but okay, you're asked to do something, so you do it. But I thought, right. And he's still alive in his 90s in Birmingham. So I think in terms of agenda, we've actually gone through it. Has anybody got anything they would like to talk about?
I can make an observation about the liberation questionnaires. I think you sent me my father's, and I had to go to the Arboretum to get hold of his gunners and his technological air gunner. No, his observer and his technological air gunner. And it was when I put the three together, while they were all filled in basically the same, the information at the bottom was slightly different and explained where all three of them had been during their captivity and why there were various gaps between actually being shot down and then ending up in Nafuna. And the more hilarious bit of it was that the Afuna was sort of naval officers only, flying ones, and they didn't realise that the technological air gunner wasn't an officer, and he was with my father until a month before the end of the war, when they suddenly shipped him off to Changi when they discovered that he was neither a lieutenant nor a sub-lieutenant.
Right.
Ridiculous, isn't it? But yet, having got all three questionnaires, then the whole thing, they were together all the time in captivity until the last month. In fact, the photograph of them is up on the Mansell website. All looking pretty ragged and tattered.
Well, I'm trying to think where I read it. Here we go again. But evidently, now how true this is, I don't know. But the Japanese took photos of every POW.
Really?
Now, I would try and find out where that came from. But yes, because I mentioned it to somebody yesterday that has been researching for about 30 odd years. He said, "Oh yeah," he said, that doesn't surprise me. And I said, "Yeah," and I said they're telling us the MOD have said that they've got no photos at all of POWs. And he just gave me that. Yeah, you believe them? Because we know that WO 416 was released and withdrawn after a week.
Really?
And they are the, I think if it's not 416, it's 461. I can soon get you the correct designation. Because there were photos. And these are the German POW index cards. Index cards of men who were captured by the Germans. I assume the Italians as well. But there were photos with them. So they're evidently being digitized now, so you won't see the photos, but you'll see the cards. But then those index cards will disappear down to the salt mine in Cheshire, into deep storage.
Really?
Yeah. And the photos. Well,
why would they do that?
I can understand a bit about the photos because they are uncovering cases at Kew now where they used to have the Merchant Navy records. You could just request those and look them up. We can't do that anymore because they were finding that there were people that were looking up the details for identity theft. Yeah.
Right.
So now, if you want to look at a merchant seaman's record, you look at it with somebody in the same room. And you have to put a case forward as why you want to see it.
Right.
So that's just one for instance. So that's why they withdrew the cards and the photos.
God, that's depressing.
I know it is.
People would do such a thing.
Oh. Well, I was speaking to somebody the other day. On email. There was an email I hadn't answered, so I went back to him and apologised. But his grandfather was killed on the Ofoko Maru. And he said on this one particular website that he found a file that's missing at Kew.
Oh.
There's lots of stuff that you have very tight security now. But when they were moving stuff from the old building to the new building, lots went walkabout. Quite a bit went walkabout.
Right.
You know, you go into Kew now with a laptop. Open your laptop. They'll just give it the once over, and everybody just accepts it. Yeah. And we went through, I think it was a couple of months ago, and somebody looks, I went through behind this guy and said, what are you looking at your laptop for? I said, to make sure we haven't got a false bottom on the laptop.
To put things in? Dear, oh.
Somebody has been prosecuted. There was a guy researching 617 Squadron, which is the Dam Busters.
Mm.
And lots of documents were smuggled out of Q, sent to the United States, and sold on to collectors. The guy involved in the States is doing 7 years. The guy over here, I'm still waiting to hear what his prison sentence will be, because he also stole logbooks from the Three Widows, stole her husband's logbooks. So,
was this for identification purposes, a false identification?
No, they're just trying to make a lot of money.
Just for profit?
Yeah.
Disgraceful.
Very sad.
The trouble is, once those records go, they're gone.
Mm.
You know, we do get cases where bits and pieces are misfiled at Q. We have one complete file of liberation questionnaires that's no longer available because it's officially posted as missing, which means somebody has put it in the wrong box. So they've done the search and they've not come up with this missing file. But the only trouble is, if it was put in a box that's not used very much or not requested very much, those items are being moved out of Q into deep storage. So you can still get them. You have to give 3 days notice and they will get them back up for you. But they say, well, why pay to store it at Q when we can put it in deep store for a pittance? And that's what's happening. That's what will happen with the digitized records. Once, if nobody requests it after for a year, they will go into deep store. So, shame, really.
Right.
That's why I keep on to the co-FEPOW guys. Let's get these questionnaires finished. Come on, let's do photograph them.
I mean, that's the good thing with the National Archive in Australia, is that they digitise the records, but they don't charge you for them. You can just access them online.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not all of them, of course, but there's a certain number of them that you can. And I've just learnt this weekend, actually, because a lady in Fremantle asked me to do a little research for her on her father, who was 8th Division Signals in A-Force. And so took some details and did some fishing and research for it. And lo and behold, found his whole service records all online in the National Archives in Australia. And the information was amazing. You know, timeline, his whole service record, everything. So it's incredible that some of the problems in Britain that you have trying to trace various documents, like war records, for example. You've got to go through the MOD and you've got to be next of kin and prove, have proof of this. And yeah, the Australian record, I could just go straight, didn't even have to log in, just straight online and it was all there. And then also the Melbourne University have actually, they've digitised all the Red Cross records. So for any Australian personnel, you can actually go online through the university website and actually access the Red Cross record. Doesn't give you a great deal of information, but it actually gives you enough, for a basic search and a basic research, even down to the POW number and et cetera, which I guess has come from their index card, which we know they're all hidden away somewhere that haven't been made available. So I was interested, with the Red Cross records. I mean, do you know where the British Red Cross records are kept?
My honest answer to that is going to be no, but I've got to do some digging to find out.
Are they kept in Switzerland as the First World War ones are?
They might well be. They might well be. Yeah. Because certainly somebody, I was doing some research and she sent me a document. She said, "Oh, you might be interested in this. I got it from the Red Cross." And it's in French. Mm-hmm. But it's a certain date. This particular date was in 1944, I think. Mm-hmm. The camp was non-Pluduc. Mm-hmm. It listed the men in this camp, her father amongst them, but there were men that were later killed in a bombing raid. And it had a particular reference at the top of the page. When I got his POW card, that reference was on his POW card. So I'm going through and thinking, well, was this done for all of the POWs? And that's something I've got to try and find out what they've got from my father. But I will try the Red Cross in the UK, and if that, hopefully they'll probably point me in the right direction and see what I can find in Geneva. But the last time I spoke to them was years ago, and they said, "Well, no, we can't tell you that much. You seem to know more than we do." I said, "Well, yeah, but I'd be interested to see exactly what you got." It's like my father's record. I sent for it the first time in the year about 2001, and I got a typed letter back. And it said, "Of course, we can't tell you all the camps he was in and things like this," and then proceeded to list all the camps he was in. And I thought, it was only after the cards and the questionnaires were released, you suddenly think to yourself, "Oh, that's who had the questionnaires. They were the MOD." But they must have been in a particular file. I don't know, but I got all that. I've resent for them again because they were doing photocopies, and I asked for my father's medical record. And because he stayed in the army, I suppose, I got his medical record as well. So I've got the first letter and then photocopies. No copy of the Liberation Questionnaire, I would hasten to add, because that was now in the public domain at Kew. But it's quite interesting, and yet other people are writing and saying, ask for the medical record. They get told, "No, sorry, I had it." And I'm thinking, well, why? Unless it was because my father stayed in. I didn't know he had a Chelsea pensioner number, but he did.
Because that's another thing with the Australian records is that all the medical records are missing. Like in the file series 347 at Q, it lists all the British medical records, and there are a lot of Australian ones mixed up in them, especially in Taso and at Chiang Kai, then at Nakhon Pathom as well. But the actual files that are obviously produced by the Australian medics are not available. They just don't seem to be there at all. So no idea where they are. Like the ones for Roberts Hospital, Alexandra Hospital, etc., Malay No. 1 Hospital. There are probably an assortment of Australians in those files in the early part after the Battle of Singapore, and mostly for injury. But beyond that, there's no Australians listed. So what they did with their records, who knows?
Well, it's
they've certainly gone missing somewhere.
Where are the rest of the POW cards?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, no one seems to have any answers, but and there must be somewhere. I mean, they would have kept records without uncertainly. Certainly they would have kept records. So that there will definitely be archives somewhere, without a doubt. And why they won't release them, who knows? So.
Going back to where you said about not having photographs, all the POWs were photographed in Japan when they arrived there. And as far as I can make out, the only way you got the photographs was on the surrender, when Japanese surrendered, and you happened to pick it up while you were there, because I have a couple of them.
Yeah.
So the prisoners went in and got them themselves.
it may well be. I mean, it's whether they kept photos in individual camps. Certainly, when you look at the Japanese camps in Japan, it would appear that they kept them in the camp office.
Yes, yes, that's where
on the Thai Burma Railway, with each work group, you had an officer and 4 other ranks keeping up the POW index cards for the men on the railway in that group. Whether that had photos or not, or I couldn't tell you. Just don't know.
Talked about various things.
But yeah.
Can I grab myself a glass?
Yes, it'll be interesting that if they are buried perhaps in Japanese archives somewhere, but I would have thought the Japanese would have turned them over.
Do have a look. In fact, this is what it looks like. Can they see you too? Yes,
yep. Oh yeah.
Hey,
you've got Kevin. Kevin's with us. Your mic's off, Kevin.
Oh, that's it, Kevin. His mic's off.
Yeah, your mic's off, Kevin.
In fact, I'm going to leave the call now, and I'll see some of you all on Sunday, perhaps, next Sunday.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'll see you next Sunday.
Yes.
All right.
How do you actually leave? Do you just press off?
Yeah, I think so.
It's top right. It should be a button that says leave or something. Is that?
Yeah, red button.
Oh, yes, there is. Hang on. End call. There we go.
Right.
Bye.
Cut us all off.
It says make on now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, that's okay. Right.
Right, folks. Anybody got anything else?
Martin, what's the update on your book?
Sorry?
How's it going? On your book?
Yeah, no, very good. Yeah, no, very good, very good. Yeah, had a lot of interest in Australia as well as in the UK, which has been really, really good. So just currently just doing a little bit of advertising around Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire at the moment, because that's obviously where most of that interest will come from. But so yeah, that's currently where it's at. But it's been well received. Yeah, so far it's been terrific.
Brilliant.
Well done. You must
so
be
when are you heading? Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say you mentioned you were heading back to Thailand. When is that?
Well, there's a few things going on back in the UK that admin that I've got to sort out, one thing and another. But if I can get it sorted out, I was thinking maybe I'd come back out to Thailand middle of November, for 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas. Yeah. But I do have plans to be here in January, maybe for a bit of a longer period, 2 or 3 months.
Right. Yeah, we're heading back up in October, so.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, my daughter's expecting her first child in September, so I want to be around for that, and be the proud grandfather.
Yep, absolutely. So,
juggling things at the moment. Yeah. Now you must be feeling very proud about the book, Martin. Is it?
Relieved to have actually got to the finish, of course, because it was a massive project. But yeah, no, it's been terrific. We had a book launch in Fremantle about 3 weeks ago, and I was absolutely staggered with how many people turned up. We had about 80 people come along. We had the Flying Angel Mission to Seafarers Club, which overlooks Fremantle Harbour, which was quite fitting because that's where the American submarine base was, and where a lot of the wolf packs that hunted down the hell ships in the South China Sea actually left from. So yeah, no, the actual launch itself was really good, and had one of my old friends, John Sanders, who is local yachtsman from Western Australia who did triple circumnavigations of the globe. He came along as well, which was really good. So he was sort of the celebrity for the day. And it was just really well received. It's terrific. Jan did a lot of work. She put some food on, and we had the use of the facilities at the club. So we had like a little conference room, and there was bar facilities and kitchen and so forth. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, sounds good.
Brilliant. Well done. Yeah. Have you started on volume 2 now?
Oh, you're funny. Yeah, look, I'll probably do another project one day. Yeah, but not in the immediate future, that's for sure. Yeah.
You've got the hang of it now. Easy.
Yeah, no, look, I've learned an awful lot, without a doubt. If I was to take on another writing project, it would be done probably a lot quicker and a lot more effectively and efficiently, because you learn by your mistakes as you go along. And I was always determined that because it was the first time I'd ever taken on anything like this, around with writing, that I wanted to make sure that it was the product was right at the end of the day. So I actually spent quite a lot of money on having it edited end to end, and it's a large book. It's 439 pages, so about 140 odd thousand words. So it's a large document, and so I paid a girl in Singapore, Kerry Cracknell, who actually edited John Cooper's book as well, and it was John who actually introduced me to her, and she took on the project and persevered with backwards and forwards between here and Singapore and bits and pieces, and we got that done, and then I actually paid a professional in Perth to format it into book format, which same again, that was a lot of toing and froing and design and alterations and proofing and so forth. So it's big enough and massive enough just to even get to the end of a manuscript, like in first draft, which did it in A4, and you get to the end of that and you think, oh yeah, it's great. You just give it to someone and they just edit it, and then someone just puts it together. But it's another long road after that. There's lots of proofing to do, lots of backwards and forwards, and checking, rechecking, and I'm pleased to say so far that of all the people that have read it, I've only found 3 mistakes. So, and one is a comma that shouldn't be there, and one is I spelled Ridgemont, a small town in Bedfordshire, I spelt it incorrectly, and I made one mistake that my dad picked up, that I put my grandmother's date of death the wrong year for some reason. I don't know why I did that, but that's all that's come back so far. So it's been fantastic. But I've had a few people write me some nice emails, on what their views, and a bit of a book review, personal book review, which has been great. Yeah, so. Well, but you'll have to write one, Ray, and on your discoveries in Ubon.
I know, I keep plugging away at it, but it's a long job.
Yeah, it can't be easy.
It is. It is.
It just cannot be easy.
Yeah.
I can assure you that I actually I lock myself away for about 4 years. I spent every weekend and evenings and bits and pieces before and after work, pretty much for solid for about 4 years, just continuous. And when we were going away on trips away, I'd always take the laptop with me and always be doing little bits and pieces. And
you're still married?
Yeah, I know. Jan's very, very supportive and very understanding. And she loves coming to Thailand as well, and and Singapore. So we've done many trips to Singapore as well to gather all the information and to get up and close with where all of these events took place. Oh, there she is now.
Right on cue.
Here's the Bernie.
No, it's all good. Yeah. Yeah, so it's enormous. It's enormous without a doubt, and I really set out to write a story and to transfer facts and data and informations from various reports and files and diaries and anecdotes into a continuous moving timeline and story is pretty difficult, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of rewriting. It takes a lot of getting things into right sequences and so forth. But I must admit, I'm glad for quite a few reasons that I didn't publish a year ago when I probably really did finish the draft initially. I persevered and decided, no, I'm not going to publish yet, because there's various bits and pieces that I really still wanted to chase up on, and lo and behold, I was able to get vital bits of information and vital little bits of more information that complemented and filled out the story even more. So yeah, the timing was fantastic, and probably one of the reasons why that happened was because Kerry, who was editing, she actually took probably 2/3 of the draft to work on, and she said, well, you keep writing, and when you've finished, send me the last bit and I'll finish that. Well, it worked out that I did start to finish my last bit, and then she turned around and said, well, I've actually got some contract work that's come up, and her deadline kept getting pushed forwards, and so it actually allowed me probably another 6 months to finish off, and I'm glad it did, because in that 6 months I really did put some good finishing touches to it. But yeah, definitely time for a rest.
Yeah, God, yeah. Right, folks. Anybody got anything else? Because we've been gone on now for over an hour, so.
No, all good.
All right, happy to end the meeting now. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very, very much, everybody.
Nice to see everybody.
Yep. Thank you very much
Nice
for
to
coming
see
on and contributing. It's very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Keep up the good work, Ray.
Okay. Yep.
Bye.
Look forward to you next time on
Bye-bye.
Facebook. All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Turn the recording off.